If I asked you to write a theme for Wonder Woman, how would you do it? Well, if you're a longtime viewer of the channel, then you know that in order to write a good superhero theme, you need to musically express what that hero represents. So with that in mind, what does Wonder Woman represent? Easy, she tells us.
It's about what you believe. And I believe in love.
Alright, wrap it up. Someone get Celine Dion on the phone. No, that doesn't work, because Wonder Woman doesn't represent love. At least, she doesn't represent romantic love. So what does she represent? Well, if you think about it, she actually spends almost the entire film wanting to find and kill Ares.
And stopping the god of war is our foreordinance. As Amazons, this is our duty. If no one else will defend the world from Ares, then I must. The god of war is our responsibility. Only an Amazon can defeat him. Hey, no. I let you go. You take me to Ares.
Now look at me. If you keep looking off before we find the gas, we won't be able to stop anything.
I will stop Ares.
It isn't until she kills the general, gets a pep talk from Steve Trevor, finds out that Ares is the werewolf from Harry Potter, watches Steve sacrifice himself, and then almost crushes Dr. Does-Nothing when she finally realizes what she wants to fight for and becomes Wonder Woman. See, the whole idea behind Wonder Woman is that she sees the potential for good within everyone she meets, which is the whole point of this line.
But then I glimpsed the darkness that lives within their light, and learned that inside every one of them, there will always be both.
Which is what she realizes when Steve sacrifices himself. He admits to doing shady things and not necessarily being an all-around Boy Scout.
I went undercover and pretended to be somebody else. Shot people on the beach, smuggled a notebook, liar, murder, smuggler. You still coming?
But when he sacrifices himself, he forces her to realize that even though he's done some sucky things in the past, that doesn't necessarily make him a bad person.
You don't think I get it after what I've seen out there? You don't think I wish I could tell you that it was one bad guy to blame?
That's what makes this line so important.
They do not deserve your protection!
It's not about deserve.
It isn't about what people deserve, it's about what they're capable of.
My mother was right. She said the world of men do not deserve you. They don't deserve our help, Steve.
It's not about deserve. It's not. Maybe we don't. May we get what we want.
May we get what we need.
But may we never get what we deserve.
Bang.
But for a massive portion of this film, Wonder Woman isn't really Wonder Woman. She's just Princess Diana of Themyscira, off to go and perform her divine duty as an Amazon and kill Ares. This is in direct contrast to what you see in a lot of superhero films. In most superhero films, the hero will have what they represent and fight for established early on in the film, or the director will just assume that the audience has some idea of what the hero is all about before the film even begins. A great example is like in Superman. In Superman, we see him tell Lois about the whole
truth and justice in the American way
before we get any conflict with Lex Luthor. In Spider-Man, we see Uncle Ben drop the "with great power comes great responsibility" line right after Peter gets bitten. But then with something like Batman, they just assume that you already know what Bats is all about. That's why the film opens with the old bait and switch. You think it's Bruce Wayne about to have his parents murdered, but instead it's Batman preventing that from happening and in turn showing you what he's all about.
I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
So when it comes to scoring these kinds of films, you know that you could just write a theme defining what the superhero represents, and you're pretty much done. But for Wonder Woman, it's not like that. For the majority of the film, Diana is just an Amazon and doesn't really ascend and become Wonder Woman until the very end. So instead of scoring this like a superhero film with just one theme that expresses what the hero represents, they needed to score Wonder Woman more like Star Wars. See, one of the biggest accomplishments of the Star Wars soundtrack is how Williams didn't necessarily score characters, instead he scored ideas. And when we hear those thematic ideas being played for a specific character, we get a better understanding of what that character represents. Like, Obi-Wan doesn't have a theme, but the Force has a theme. So when we first see Obi-Wan, we hear that Force theme.
Come here, my little friend. Don't be afraid. Oh, don't worry, he'll be all right.
And we hear it again when he dies. And we hear it again when he tells Luke to give up on technology and go vegan.
Use the Force, Luke. Let go, Luke.
But what that means is that when we hear the Force theme playing when Luke is looking at the binary sunset and is frustrated about being stuck on a farm, we know that it's the Force that's encouraging him to leave and go on his adventure. Furthermore, when we hear it at the end of Return of the Jedi when Luke is fighting Vader and Luke says that he can sense the goodness in Vader, we can hear that Luke is tapping into the Force, putting him on par with Obi-Wan.
There is no conflict.
You couldn't bring yourself to kill me before, and I don't believe you'll destroy me now.
And there's a significant amount of flexibility and nuance that can come from a system like this. Think about it. We always hear the Imperial March whenever Vader's on screen. Vader doesn't get his own theme, the Empire does. But playing the Imperial March whenever Vader's on screen reminds us that Vader is an agent of the Empire. When the group gets ambushed and Han and Luke are dealing with TIE fighters, we hear the Rebel fanfare because they're acting in the interest of the Rebel Alliance and saving the princess. When Leia goes to Jabba's hut to save Han and she reveals herself, we don't hear her theme from the first film. Instead, we hear the love theme titled Han Solo and the Princess. From that, we know that Leia isn't being sent on a mission by the Rebel Alliance to go save Han, or like the Force isn't guiding her to his location. We know that she's saving him out of love. So by scoring ideas instead of just characters, you can have your characters be affected by the world around them and become agents that represent those specific aspects of your given world. That's exactly what needed to happen in Wonder Woman. At first, Diana's just acting as an Amazon, performing her divine Amazonian duty. So have there be an Amazon theme that plays whenever Diana's just being an Amazon, like when we hear that story about Zeus and during her training and whenever she's just blindly running after Ares. Then you can have another theme for the selfish, destructive, evil side of humanity and have it represent Dr. Poison, the General, and Ares. That way, instead of feeling like three separate characters with separate motivations, you can musically unify them to represent one antagonistic force. And finally, you can have a third theme that represents Steve Trevor and his band of merry men. The whole point of these characters is that even though they're all critically flawed in some way, they're still capable of being good. And you can have that theme explore their struggles without branding them as defective people. So when we get that mini flashback where Steve convinces Diana that she can save people, and she then goes on to say that it's not about what people deserve, we could get the Amazon theme and the Steve Trevor group theme played together, symbolizing that Wonder Woman is an Amazon that fights for the goodness that she believes all people are capable of. Just like how Luke goes from not really knowing who he is to the last Jedi, the last herald of the Force. But we didn't get that, and it's all Batman v Superman's fault. No, seriously, it actually is. Think about it. We just put in all this effort to come up with a theme for the Wonder Woman film. How on earth are you supposed to thematically represent a character that does next to nothing aside from showing up at the end of the film and fighting a monster? Like, kudos to Zimmer and Junkie XL for taking it on. I have no idea how stressful it must have been when Snyder told them that he wanted a Wonder Woman theme. In an interview with Cinema Blend discussing the creation of Wonder Woman's theme, Zimmer starts talking about how superhero movies are like, they're so masculine and male generated, and how we need to have more women in the whole process, more women composers succeeding and more women filmmakers succeeding. And when he talks about the specific idea behind Wonder Woman's theme, he mentions that he wanted Wonder Woman's theme to sound like a banshee's wail, which I thought was a really interesting insight as to why we ended up with what we did for the BVS Wonder Woman theme. See, if you've seen my video on superhero themes, then you know that brass instruments have always represented some sort of power. So, if you want your hero to sound powerful, then you want your hero to be represented by that loud, powerful brass. But, on the other hand, if you want someone to sound powerless, say, a damsel in distress, then you want the polar opposite of that loud, brassy sound, which is why so many love themes and damsel in distress themes are written heavily for strings and lighter woodwinds. But if your hero is always played by a man, and the damsel in distress is always played by, well, a damsel, then culturally, we're going to start associating that brass with masculinity and those strings with femininity. Zimmer must have been worried that if he scored Wonder Woman like classic Superman or Batman, that people would have started criticizing him for making Wonder Woman sound powerful by masculinizing her. So he compromised by writing Wonder Woman's theme for electric cello. All the culturally programmed feminine sentimentality of a string instrument, but all the power of an electric guitar. I thought it was a really great solution to a problem that might have otherwise blown up in his face. And it clearly worked because the theme became hugely popular, but this ultimately created a problem when they wanted to write an entire film for Wonder Woman. Now, Rupert Gregson-Williams and his team have to take the theme for Wonder Woman from BVS, a theme that was written for a character with almost no lines, personality, or backstory, and somehow fit that theme for an entire film about that one character. Basically, this could have gone two ways. One, let's assume that Zimmer got lucky and somehow managed to write a theme for Wonder Woman in Batman vs. Superman that somehow perfectly expressed what Wonder Woman represents, and the Gregson Williams team would have just been able to copy that theme and paste it in the new film. Well, in order to fit our model, Gregson Williams would have then had to chop up that theme, give half to the Amazons and the other half to Steve Trevor, because Wonder Woman, as she appears in Batman vs. Superman, doesn't really show up until the end of this film. Or, the other way this could have gone is, we could assume that Zimmer wrote a theme that perfectly fit the character on the screen, which is to say, not very deep, because, let's be honest here, to some extent, all Zimmer had to go off of was the fact that Wonder Woman is a strong woman. And if that was the case, how would Gregson Williams compensate for a theme that expresses such a simple character and expand on that to last an entire film? And you can see that the Gregson Williams team struggled with this problem. They realized that they couldn't just play the BVS theme during every single action scene because, well, it would sound like this. But at the same time, that piece of music wouldn't work for the scenes that were mostly character-driven. If the BVS theme is the one theme that everyone associates with Wonder Woman, but it doesn't work as the main theme for the main character of this film, what do you do? Well, they decided to introduce new music knowing full well that it wasn't going to be remembered as Wonder Woman's theme, while at the same time trying to include the BVS theme whenever they could without it becoming too jarring. So, like, the film opens with some electric cello, and you hear that rhythmic ostinato all over the place.
Where are you going? Slow down!
So when the BVS theme eventually arrives, it doesn't show up completely out of nowhere. But check out this new piece of music that they used when they wanted to represent Wonder Woman, but the BVS theme wouldn't fit.
Please, so important. Thank you very much. This has been such an honor for me taking you for...
And this little leitmotif is really cool because it's actually a part of the BVS Wonder Woman theme. But these are effectively two different themes for the same character. So when it comes to a central conflict of the film, which do you use and why? Well, when it came to fighting the general, they went with the BVS theme. But then they mixed in some of the new music we hear when we first see Themyscira.
Hello, Diana. Hello, Diana.
And considering how at this moment Diana believes she's killing Ares, I thought it was an interesting statement on Diana's last action as just an Amazon. It sort of acts as an intersection between the Diana that we see in Themyscira at the beginning of the film and the Wonder Woman that we see in BVS. But then when it comes to the fight with Ares and we see Diana become Wonder Woman, what do you do? There are no themes that completely represent Wonder Woman. We have a theme for Themyscira, and we have a theme for when she fights. We even have a piece of a theme that tries to complement that fighting theme and make her more of a complete character, but they're all bits and pieces of who she is. She doesn't have a complete theme that represents her desire to fight for everyone's potential to do good. She doesn't have parents to avenge. She doesn't have truth, justice, and the American way. She doesn't have the Force. We see her become a hero, but we don't hear her become a hero. And then the credits roll.